you assume you remain the same person across the movement of days. You rely on memory, preference, and habit to confirm this continuity. Yet, when you look closely, your sense of self does not stay fixed. It shifts with every new thought and every new interpretation. This instability raises an uncomfortable question. Why does the self feel as if it fades in the flow of time? Ibn Arabi approached this question by challenging the assumption that the I you defend is a stable entity. He argued that what you call the self is not a fixed substance, but a temporary configuration of awareness. If this configuration dissolves, is anything actually lost? Or does the fading simply expose that the self you protected was never the enduring center you imagined? What remains when the familiar definition weakens? Ibn Arabi lived in a world shaped by discussions about existence, perception, and the nature of reality. His work directed attention away from personality and toward the structure of awareness itself. He questioned the validity of treating the personal narrative as the essence of existence. In his metaphysical framework, what you call self belongs to the domain of appearances, not to the ground of being. This raises a challenge. If the real is continuous and unchanging, why does the personal self appear fragmented and unstable? And if fragmentation is only an appearance, what produces it? You often interpret change as something happening to you. You imagine a stable subject who moves through time and accumulates experiences. But when you examine the movement of thought, you do not find a travel only, a series of shifting states. There is no fixed agent behind them. Ibn Arabi suggests that change belongs to phenomena, not to the essence of awareness. Everything that can be observed is subject to transition. If everything you identify with mood, opinion, memory changes, then where is the stable observer who claims ownership of this process? And if no such observer can be found, what exactly undergoes change? Philosophers describe the mind as generating continuity through interpretation, rather than through any enduring substance. The mind connects discrete moments and weaves them into a unified narrative. This narrative feels solid because it allows you to function, but its stability is imagined. Ibn Arabi identifies this interpretive process as the source of illusion. The narrative of I gives the impression of persistence, even though its components constantly shift. When you inspect this narrative, its supposed unity dissolves. So if continuity is constructed, not inherent, what is the reality beneath the construction? You begin to notice a distinction between identity and awareness. Identity changes with memory, belief, and mood. Awareness does not participate in these fluctuations. It remains present regardless of what arises. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that what is constant cannot be defined by personal attributes. The identity you defend belongs to changing content, while the fact of awareness does not depend on that content. This suggests an unsettling possibility. Maybe the self you believe is fading was never the foundation of your being. If that is true, then what is the role of the everyday I you protect? Time feels like an external force guiding you forward, yet Ibn Arabi describes time as a feature of perception. You do not move through time. You perceive transitions between states. What you label as the flow of time is simply your recognition of change. When this perspective becomes clear, the fading of the self turns into a perceptual event rather than a real loss. You are not dissolving in time. You are observing the dissolution of assumptions about yourself. If fading is only a perception within awareness, then what is its significance? You habitually attach your sense of self to preferences, roles, and emotions. When any of these shift, you interpret it as a personal diminishment. The feeling of fading appears because you place identity in what does not stay. Ibn Arabi argues that this attachment is the fundamental mistake. You identify with what is inherently unstable. When the unstable changes, you experience a threat to your existence. But who decided that these shifting contents define you? And if they do not define you, why sustain the belief that their movement diminishes your being? Ibn Arabi's distinction between the real and the relative clarifies this confusion. The relative includes everything that changes personality, mood, belief, and memory. The real refers to the constant ground of awareness that enables experience. The problem emerges when the relative is treated as the essential identity. Anxiety about fading arises from expecting permanence in what is designed to shift. If the relative must change, then fading is not a failure. It is a natural function of its nature. So why interpret a natural process as an existential threat? A shift occurs when you recognize that the fading you fear is not a danger but evidence of the self's constructed nature. The instability you experience reveals that the personal identity never possessed independent existence. Ibn Arabi suggests that this recognition frees you from defending what cannot endure. When you stop insisting that the constructed self must remain intact, the fear of fading weakens. But when this defense dissolves, what stands in its place? As you continue the inquiry, a quiet clarity emerges. You see that awareness does not depend on any identity you assemble. It does not fade, because it was never defined by what changes. In Ibn Arabi's terms, the real is the constant ground against which all fading appears. Nothing new is added to your being, and nothing is taken away. The only shift is the recognition that the center you previously defended was never stable. The fading of identity is not a loss. It is the unveiling of what does not fade. Without the belief that you are identical with what changes, what becomes available to be understood? You'll return to the initial question with new clarity. The self seems to fade in time only when you confuse identity with awareness. Identity belongs to the shifting patterns of thought. Awareness remains untouched by their movement. Ibn Arabi's insight becomes a guide. Fading is not the disappearance of your essence, but the erosion of a mistaken assumption. When you stop searching for permanence in what cannot hold it, the anxiety dissolves. The self that fades was never the one that needed protection. What remains is the quiet recognition that awareness does not participate in time's flow. It simply witnesses it.